Hi everyone and welcome to Firstpost America. I'm Eric Ham coming to you from our studios here in Washington, D.C. And over the next few minutes we'll take you from the U.S. and around the world covering all the top stories of the day. But before that, here's a look at the latest global headlines. Shares in India's largest airline carrier Indigo fall over 8% as the carrier continues to reel from an operational crisis that's triggered mass flight cancellations and the heightened risk of regulatory action. Thailand launches airstrikes on neighboring Cambodia as both sides accuse each other of violating a ceasefire brokered by President Donald Trump in October. The recent strike has killed at least one Thai soldier and 4 Cambodian civilians. China urges Japan to immediately stop what it calls dangerous harassment of Beijing's routine military exercises and halt all disinformation and political manipulation that mislead the international community. The European Union rejects any attempt by the United States to meddle in Europe's politics after Washington released a new security strategy sharply criticizing the bloc's policies. And Sri Lanka nearly doubles its military deployment to regions devastated by a cyclone that's killed over 600 people. Tens of thousands of troops are being sent to assist communities overwhelmed by the destruction. We begin with the latest in Russia and Ukraine peace talks. A 3-day diplomatic marathon in Florida has ended without a breakthrough. Over the weekend, President Donald Trump publicly expressed frustration with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, saying that the Ukrainian leader isn't ready to sign off on Washington's latest peace proposal. The president told reporters he's disappointed that Zelensky hadn't fully read the U.S.-backed peace proposal, and then added that Russia appears to be fine with the deal.
So we've been speaking to President Putin, and we've been speaking to Ukrainian leaders, including Zelensky, President Zelensky. And I have to say that I'm a little bit disappointed that President Zelensky hasn't yet read the proposal. That was as of a few hours ago. His people love it, but he hasn't. Russia's fine with it. Russia, I guess, would rather have the whole country when you think of it.
And as usual, President Donald Trump continues to show favor towards the Kremlin, even though Moscow says it might be open to the plan, even though Putin himself still hasn't endorsed it. In fact, just last week, he dismissed parts of the proposal as unworkable, even after U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner traveled to Moscow in hopes of moving the negotiations forward. Those talks produced no visible shift in Russia's stance. Meanwhile, Ukrainian and American officials held extensive sessions through Saturday. Afterwards, the Ukrainian president himself said that the talks were constructive, but not easy.
Yesterday, we spoke with Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. I thank them for their readiness to work together 24/7. The American representatives know the basic Ukrainian positions. The conversation was constructive, although not easy.
As the negotiations were occurring, Ukraine faced yet another barrage of Russian drone and missile strikes, leaving critical infrastructure compromised from energy sites to rail networks. Thousands of households are now without heating or water. President Zelensky is in London today meeting with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, and French President Emmanuel Macron. And discussions are expected to focus on the ongoing peace plan. Now, key sticking points include territorial concessions and security guarantees for Kyiv. President Donald Trump initially embraced Putin, chastised Zelensky, and pushed aggressively for a deal. But frustration has continued to grow as efforts to sway Moscow, including a high-profile summit in Alaska, failed to yield progress. In recent weeks, the White House even sanctioned Russian oil firms in a bid to increase pressure, ratcheting up the tension on both sides as Donald Trump Jr. delivered a fiery speech at a Middle East conference sharply criticizing Kyiv. He claimed Ukraine's wealthy elites have fled, leaving the peasant class to fight, and accused President Zelensky of prolonging the war to avoid losing an election.
Ukraine was a far more corrupt country than Russia, as designated by the United States prior to this war. But then, because of the war, and because he's one of the great marketers of all time, Zelensky became a borderline deity, especially to the left. He was beyond reproach. Years of corruption, years of graft and theft on a world stage that everyone in this room knew were happening, were totally absolved. It's ridiculous.
For now, the path forward remains uncertain. Even as the White House continues to push, Kyiv remains both vigilant and cautious, while Moscow signals resistance. And on the ground, the war continues to grind, with each strike, each meeting, and each statement shaping an unpredictable landscape. The Trump administration is once again under intense scrutiny as Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth becomes engulfed in two overlapping scandals that have triggered bipartisan alarm, raised questions about his judgment, and fueled growth and growing cause for his removal. What began as outrage over a deadly boat strike in the Caribbean has now collided with a stinging Inspector General report accusing him of mishandling classified information, creating the most serious crisis of his time at the Pentagon. And at the center of the storm is the administration's aggressive campaign against alleged drug smuggling boats in both the Caribbean and Pacific. Since September, at least 22 U.S. strikes have killed 87 people, part of a mission by President Donald Trump, which he claims is vital to stopping fentanyl from reaching American shores. But experts note that fentanyl traffickers rarely use long-distance boats, and the administration has yet to provide evidence linking the targeted vessels to terrorist groups, as it claims.
Well, I'd like to see Hegseth sacked. I mean, for one, though this goes up all the way to Trump, we have to be, honest about that. I would like the U.S. government to compensate these people, to apologize, and to stop the killings. I mean, that's what I'd like to see. That would be my wish list, for sure.
The controversy exploded after it was revealed that a September 2nd strike left survivors clinging to debris, and that those men were killed in a deliberate follow-up double-tap attack.
Later on, a couple hours later, I was told, hey, there had to be a reattack because there were a couple folks that could still be in the fight, access to radios, there was a link-up point of another potential boat, drugs were still there, they were actively interacting with them, had to take that reattack. I said, Roger, sounds good.
Lawmakers who viewed classified footage said the men were clearly shipwrecked. Democratic Representative Jim Hines described the video as showing U.S. forces attacking shipwrecked sailors, while Republican Senator Rand Paul suggested Hegseth either lied about the incident or failed to understand what exactly happened. Others, like Senator Tom Cotton, insisted 4 strikes on the vessel were lawful and needful, saying the survivors were actually trying to re-engage.
The first strike, the second strike, and the third and the fourth strike on September 2nd were entirely lawful and needful, and they were exactly what we would expect our military commanders to do.
Now, the Trump administration's explanations continue to shift. Early statements suggested that the second strike was in self-defense and ordered by Admiral Frank Bradley. Later, Hegseth said Bradley acted with his authorization, but also had full autonomy.
Anybody that's been in the Situation Room or they've been in the war room there, the Secretary's office, know you don't walk in and say, kill him. It's just patently ridiculous. It's meant to create a cartoon of me and the decisions that we make and how we make them. It's ridiculous. The chairman and Admiral Bradley and everybody shot it down immediately because anybody that knows that's not how things go. There's a very defined process, specific criteria, go, no go, yes, no, lawyers, intel analysts, everything. And then after that, you simply say cleared hot or not.
Now, the president himself, in true Trumpian fashion, continues to distance himself from the attacks, claiming he was unaware of the operational details and hinting he would not have approved the second strike. And as the crisis continues to unfold, Hegseth was hit with a second scandal. A Pentagon Inspector General report released last Thursday found he violated Defense Department policy by sharing precise classified details of planned Yemen airstrikes on his personal Signal app. The messages, which included aircraft numbers, strike times, and targeting information, were sent only hours before the missions. But despite these findings, Hegseth declared on social media that there was no classified information and that he was totally exonerated. The twin crisis has triggered backlash inside Congress, but Hegseth remains in his position largely because President Donald Trump continues to provide overwhelming support. For now, he's bruised, but still standing. But as both his and President Trump's approval ratings continue to crater, the question now is, for how long? And moving on, a controversy is unfolding at the crossroads of technology, regulation, and geopolitics. And at the center of it all is social media platform X. Last week, the European Union slammed X with a whopping $140 million fine, accusing the platform of violating multiple transparency rules under the bloc's sweeping Digital Services Act. It's the first major penalty imposed under the law for content-related breaches, and it comes months after scrutiny into how X actually operates. Almost immediately, though, Elon Musk himself fired back in a series of posts. He declared that the EU should be dissolved, adding that the bloc is not a democracy, but rather a bureaucracy. He went on to argue that sovereignty should return to individual nations so that governments can represent their citizens without interference from Brussels. And Musk wasn't the only one raising his voice against the action. As if on cue, members of the Trump administration weighed in as well. Before the penalty was even announced, Vice President J.D. Vance warned Brussels against attacking American companies through what he called censorship.
Rumors are swirling that the EU Commission will fine X hundreds of millions of dollars for not engaging in censorship. The EU should be supporting free speech, not attacking American companies over garbage.
And hours after the fine became public, Secretary of State Marco Rubio also echoed the criticism, escalating the diplomatic row.
The European Commission's $140 million fine isn't just an attack on X, it's an attack on all American tech platforms and the American people by foreign governments. The days of censoring Americans online are over.
Now, at the heart of the conflict is the European Union's most ambitious attempt yet to police online platforms. They're requiring of big tech to clean up harmful and illegal content, be transparent about how their algorithms actually work, and provide researchers access to public data. And it gives regulators sweeping enforcement powers, including the ability to impose huge fines on companies that fall short. In fact, X isn't the only platform in their crosshairs. Apple and Meta were also fined and collectively ordered to pay nearly $800 million as the EU tries to tighten oversight of the world's most influential tech firms. The case against X, however, stands out because the platform broke 3 different transparency requirements. The most controversial violation relates to X's blue checkmark system. Regulators say that the new pay-to-verify model is deceptive and lets anyone purchase a badge of authenticity without meaningful identity checks, potentially exposing users to scams and manipulation. The Commission also found that X lacked transparency in its advertising database and failed to provide adequate access to public data for researchers despite receiving a formal warning last year. Now, X is still under investigation for how it handles illegal content and information manipulation, meaning that even more penalties and more political blowback could be on the horizon. Now, the standoff is becoming the latest flashpoint in a widening global debate about who gets to shape the digital world, who enforces the rules, and what happens when politics and platforms collide. Vice President J.D. Vance is now moving to shut down a new round of speculation about his marriage, stating that his relationship with Second Lady Usha Vance remains strong despite online claims sparked by her recent ringless appearance. His remarks follow the rapid circulation of photos of Usha Vance from a visit with First Lady Melania Trump, which triggered fresh discussion and revived earlier rumors linking Vance to Erica Kirk after their widely shared hug at a Turning Point USA event. The renewed attention spread quickly across platforms, prompting the vice president to break his silence. Here's more on the internal fight.
Vice President J.D. Vance dismissed new speculation about his marriage last Friday. He said his relationship with Usha Vance remains strong. The vice president made the remarks in an interview with NBC News. He said the couple gets a kick out of the rumors, adding that the marriage is as strong as it's ever been.
You accept that there are some sacrifices and there are some very good things that come along with it, too. But our marriage is as strong as it's ever been. And I think Usha's really taken to it. And it's been kind of cool to see how she's developed and evolved in this new role.
The latest claims surfaced after Usha appeared without her wedding ring. The moment came during a visit to Camp Lejeune on November 19th. She accompanied First Lady Melania Trump. Photos showed her left hand bare. Screenshots spread quickly. Posts questioned her expression, and the speculation multiplied within hours. But then, a spokesperson responded. The statement was brief. Usha is a mother of 3 young children. She does dishes. She gives baths. She forgets her ring. Those claims erupted after a hug between Vance and Kirk went viral on October 29th. The hug occurred at a Turning Point USA event. Online posts falsely suggested an affair. However, last month on the Megyn Kelly show, Kirk broke her silence.
Oh my gosh, please. Anyone who knows me knows I hug. And those hating on a hug probably need a hug themselves. I'll give you a free hug anytime. My love language is touch.
The vice president, on the other hand, maintained his demeanor. He described the attention as predictable. He said the couple even jokes about it. In fact, he recalled a moment from earlier last week. He said they were rushing to the White House. Usha had just showered. She realized she had left her rings upstairs. She hesitated. She worried the photos would spread again. Vance told her not to go back, and they left immediately. But hours later, more reports appeared online.
She was like, oh, if I don't go back and get them, there's going to be some ridiculous psycho who talks about it on social media. And I was like, let them. It's not even worth the trip to run back upstairs. So we actually have a little bit of fun with it. And we thought that whole viral social media cycle was kind of funny.
The vice president acknowledged the strain on their family. The couple has 3 children. They are 8, 5, and 3. Their oldest dislikes cameras. Their middle child enjoys attention. Their youngest is still adjusting. Vance said they try to limit exposure when possible.
There are certainly ways in which it's difficult on the family. I'm not going to pretend that it isn't. But it's the sacrifice that we signed up for.
Usha Vance, on the other hand, has taken on a wider role since the administration began. She now leads a national literacy initiative. She travels to schools. She reads with children. She promotes early learning. Her work has increased her visibility. She rarely gives interviews. She has maintained a steady schedule across several states. However, Vance's marriage has faced public questions since the 2024 race. Former White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki suggested earlier this year that Usha needed saving. Vance condemned the remark. He called it disgraceful. The couple has also faced commentary about Usha's Indian background. Back in October, Vance was criticized for remarks about religion. He said he hoped Usha would one day convert to Christianity. He later clarified the comments. He said she has no plans to convert. Still, the scrutiny continues. He said the coverage does not reflect the reality inside their home. He said the marriage remains stable. And as the couple continues their public duties, one question keeps resurfacing. Will the ring appear the next time Usha Vance steps into the spotlight?
Pop star Justin Bieber has set the internet abuzz, not over new music, but over a tiny iPhone button that he says is driving him up the wall. In a fiery post on X, Bieber blasted Apple for the constantly shifting microphone icon in its Messages app, even joking that he might put the company's employees in a rear naked photo chokehold if it interrupts his music one more time. His rants have since gone viral, drawing reactions from fans, tech leaders, and even, you guessed it, Elon Musk. Here's our story with more.
Justin Bieber has officially taken on one of the biggest tech companies on the planet. Not over a broken phone, not over a glitch, but over a tiny, innocent-looking iPhone button that has apparently pushed him to the brink of chaos. The pop star posted a dramatic and honestly hilarious rant on social media, threatening to put Apple employees in a quote-unquote rear naked chokehold. And this is because of the microphone icon in the Messages app. And yes, this is now a global tech news story. Welcome to 2025. So what's the issue? It turns out this small microphone button has more personalities than a reality TV contestant. When the text box is empty, it works as a dictation tool. Start typing, and it transforms into the send button. The second your message flies off, poof, it switches back to the microphone again. Bieber's problem is that he keeps accidentally hitting the microphone after sending a text, which then causes it to beep loudly and pause his music. The frustration is real. Dramatic? Absolutely. Relatable? That's debatable. He also added that turning off dictation doesn't fix anything. Instead, the button becomes the voice note recorder. Another feature famous for interrupting music and causing accidental 3-second voice notes nobody wants to send. The send button should not have multiple functions in the same spot, Bieber declared. His post quickly exploded across the internet. Elon Musk reposted it with 2 fire emojis, basically signaling, "Same, bro." And Ian Silber, head of product design at OpenAI, even jokingly invited Bieber to their design review meetings, probably hoping to avoid any future chokeholds. Many users quickly chimed in, admitting they too have fallen victim to the sneaky little button. One person thanked Bieber for calling out the user interface madness we've all been silently suffering. Another declared it the best celebrity tech take I've ever seen. Someone else insisted that anything, any button, any notification that pauses music should be deleted immediately. Another user added, "This is true though, there's no reason to have the dictation button both on the keyboard and in the text field." Others simply nodded in exhaustion. "It happens every time when I'm trying to fix my content," one wrote. And perhaps the most relatable comment of all came from a user who said, "Finally, someone else gets it." Apple, meanwhile, has stayed silent. Engineers are either pretending they didn't see it or quietly panicking that Justin Bieber is now coming for their user interface. Whether Apple updates the design or not, one thing is clear. The world has united over a very small, very annoying button. And if the company does roll out a fix soon, we may all have Justin Bieber and his imaginary chokehold to thank.
Do we not have a rendition of your song as you're just to get...
That's going to do it for us today. From all of us here at Firstpost America, we certainly thank all of you for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you right back here again tomorrow. Thanks everyone for watching.
They promised glory. They delivered fear. They shaped nations. They scarred generations. From brutal purges to propaganda machines, from stolen power to violent falls from the throne. Welcome to The Dictator, a series that strips away the myth and then exposes the men behind the tyranny. History remembers their power. Firstpost reveals their truth.